In the crisp light of an early morning in the quaint town of Avalon Heights, Elena's world was abruptly shaken when her longtime friend Natalie revealed an astonishing truth. Grayson, once the man who had once ignited her every hope and heartache, was getting married that very day. As Elena methodically gathered her belongings, each item a relic of memories both tender and bitter, the unexpected news made her pause, frozen mid-action. Her eyes, which had been intent on neatly folding her papers and packing away the remnants of a once-shared past, now locked onto Natalie's anxious expression, awaiting a reaction that would betray her inner turmoil. "I already know," Elena replied in a voice laced with sorrow and a hint of resignation. "I'm happy for him, I really am." Yet the bitterness behind her tone told a different story. A narrative of loss, sacrifice, and dreams that had once soared as high as the clouds above Avalon Heights. Natalie, shocked by the paradoxical mix of joy and pain in Elena's voice, struggled to reconcile the emotions she saw. "Elena!" Natalie implored, her voice quivering with disbelief. "You and Grayson have a daughter together. Why don't you tell him? His wedding seems nothing more than a formality, an arranged ceremony born of duty rather than passion." Elena's eyes dimmed with a sorrowful determination as she shook her head slowly, almost as if trying to sever the invisible ties of a past that still haunted her. "We both know he still desires something more from me," she murmured, her tone heavy with regret. "But he doesn't need to know about our daughter." In that quiet yet turbulent moment, she clung fiercely to the idea that some truths were better left veiled. Secrets that had long since shaped her existence, without the intrusion of another's expectations. The narrative of her life, like the fragile pages of an old diary, revealed that Grayson had never known of her secret pregnancy, which had culminated in the birth of their little girl 4 years earlier. Those 4 years had passed like a long, bittersweet winter, leaving Elena with a semblance of peace, a fragile calm that she feared might shatter with a single revelation. With a heavy heart and a mind fraught with painful memories, she left her cluttered office after meticulously organizing her files. Quietly logging out from a life that once interwove with Grayson's, she stepped out into the cool embrace of the early morning, making her way toward the bus stop with thoughts spiraling around the impending wedding. It wasn't the fact that Grayson was finally tying the knot that unsettled her so profoundly. It was the slow, inexorable triumph of his mother's machinations that both surprised and pained her. Years ago, that same relentless woman had orchestrated their separation, ensuring that Grayson's path diverged dramatically from what might have been had their love endured. Back then, Grayson had been a mere college senior, full of unbridled ambition and innocence, on the cusp of discovering a world of endless possibilities. In that fragile moment of youth, had he chosen differently, he might never have ascended to the heights of success he now occupied. Nor would he have become the titan of industry that rumors claimed he was destined to be. In the midst of these spiraling reflections, Elena recalled how she had ended their relationship on the day of her own birthday. A painful farewell that had forced her to run far away, leaving behind a piece of her soul that would forever remain entangled with his. This marked her first return to Avalon Heights in years, a reluctant homecoming driven solely by the need to secure employment and, more importantly, to protect the life of her precious daughter. Yet fate was preparing another cruel twist on that very day. As she stood waiting for the bus, lost in reverie, her phone rang, a shrill sound that cut through the silence like a knife. Glancing at the screen, Elena saw her mother Margaret's name. Frowning at the unexpected call, she answered with a hesitant, "Hello, Mom? Why are you calling now?" Almost immediately, Margaret's trembling voice filled the line, laden with urgency and distress. "Elena, your daughter has been involved in a vehicle accident here in our neighborhood," she cried. The words struck Elena like a sudden, icy gust of wind. Her heart pounded against her ribcage as the reality of the situation sunk in. "What?" she managed to choke out, voice trembling with panic. "Mom, is this true?" At that moment, the curious glances of strangers at the bus stop melted into the background, replaced by a rising tide of terror and despair. Her mind raced as she imagined the fragile 3-year-old caught in a harrowing collision, her tiny life hanging by a thread. Desperation surged through Elena as she reassured her mother. "Mom, I'm coming as fast as I can. Stay with her, please." Without wasting another second, Elena hailed a taxi, her feet barely touching the ground as she raced against time. The taxi's wheels spun through the darkening streets of Avalon Heights, carrying her to the hospital in a blur of anxiety and regret. On her arrival, she dashed into the emergency department, her eyes darting frantically from one curtained bay to another in search of her daughter. It wasn't long before she encountered Margaret, who guided her with trembling hands toward a bed where Isla lay, small and vulnerable. Margaret's whispered words, "Isla's right here," barely registered in Elena's overwhelmed consciousness. As she peered past the curtain, her heart shattered at the sight before her. A tiny body clothed in garments soaked with blood, a silent testament to the cruelty of fate. Overwhelmed by sorrow, Elena collapsed into uncontrollable sobs, her voice cracking as she demanded, "How did this happen, Mom? Weren't you watching over her?" The question hung in the sterile air, mingling with the antiseptic scent of the hospital. Margaret, ever the pillar of frail strength, attempted to soothe her daughter's grief with soft, measured words. A car with faulty brakes crashed into our home, and poor Isla was caught in the chaos. The driver is now at the police station. He has promised to cover the damages, but with so many victims involved, I doubt his promise holds any real weight. Elena's anguish boiled over as she struggled to comprehend the enormity of the situation. "Mom, what am I going to do?" she cried, her voice raw with despair. "Isla." Before Margaret could offer a comforting embrace, Elena's frantic eyes fell upon the hospital monitors and the urgent whispers of medical staff. The doctor's calm yet grave tone reached her ears. Isla required immediate blood transfusions, for she had lost far too much blood in the incident. The urgency of the situation plunged Elena into deeper terror, each second stretching into an eternity of anxious waiting. "Mom, where will we find blood that matches hers so quickly?" she pleaded. "We don't even share the same blood type." In a moment of unexpected hope, Margaret suggested with a measured breath, "Perhaps Grayson might be a match." The very name reverberated through the hospital corridor like an echo from a past Elena had desperately tried to leave behind. "Grayson? Isla's father?" she whispered in disbelief. The notion was as shocking as it was disconcerting, for she had long resolved never to see him again, especially not on a day as charged as his wedding. Yet the desperate situation left her no choice. "Mom, but he's getting married tonight," Elena protested, her voice faltering as she recalled the man she had once loved and lost. "How can I possibly show up now, after all these years? And what if he doesn't even believe that Isla is his daughter?" Margaret's eyes, filled with both desperation and unwavering maternal resolve, met Elena's in silent communication. "We have no choice," she insisted. "Do you want your daughter to die? I know Grayson well enough to believe that despite everything, he will help." Though every fiber of Elena's being recoiled at the thought of disrupting his wedding day, the overwhelming love for her child propelled her forward. With a heavy heart and tear-stained cheeks, she resolved that saving Isla was the only priority that could eclipse all past grievances. Meanwhile, in a polished mansion on the outskirts of Avalon Heights, renamed Ravenwood Court to shed the vestiges of old memories, Grayson found himself alone and restless. Outside his new home, he stood in the cool embrace of the evening air, a cigarette dangling loosely between his fingers as he contemplated the tangled web of his destiny. The wedding reception, hastily concluded and shrouded in an unexpected chill, had left him with a lingering emptiness in his chest. His mind, however, was not at ease. Amidst the remnants of what was supposed to be joy, a piercing sense of disillusionment welled up, compounded by the realization that the future he had once feared was unfolding regardless of his inner dissent. In that reflective solitude, Grayson's mood was interrupted by the warm yet insistent embrace of Vanessa, his newlywed wife. "I'm so happy we're finally married," she cooed softly, her voice imbued with a blend of relief and anticipation. "I've waited for this moment for what feels like an eternity." Yet even as her words spilled out in gentle warmth, Grayson's expression hardened with a mixture of regret and icy detachment. Gently disentangling himself from her grasp, he turned to face her, his tone laced with a quiet bitterness as he remarked, "You're happy because you got exactly what you wanted. Congratulations, Ms. Vanessa." The tension between them escalated swiftly. As Grayson strode past her, Vanessa's hand shot out, grasping his arm with a desperate urgency. "Why are you acting so cold?" she demanded, her eyes flashing with hurt. "You're my husband now. Shouldn't we be united?" The exchange, charged with unspoken resentments, soon escalated into a raw confrontation that neither of them had anticipated. In a moment of seething frustration, Grayson's simmering temper exploded as he shouted, "Shut up!" The outburst reverberated through the quiet corridors of Ravenwood Court, leaving Vanessa in tears and deepening the fissure between them. Yet, even as his anger simmered, Grayson could not shake the nagging sense that his entire life was being dictated by forces beyond his control: family obligations, past decisions, and a lingering guilt that tied him to the memories of a love long lost. As he stepped into the cool hallway to collect his thoughts, a sudden interruption came in the form of one of the housekeepers, breathless and visibly upset. "Sir, someone is here looking for you," she said, voice trembling. "She insists it's urgent." Grayson frowned, his fatigue momentarily giving way to irritation. "Who would be here tonight?" he grumbled. The housekeeper's insistence grew, her voice laden with urgency and tears as she repeated, "It's Alina, your ex-girlfriend." A rush of memories and unhealed wounds surged forth as Grayson's eyes widened in disbelief. Elena, who had vanished without trace 4 long years ago, leaving behind nothing but unanswered questions and a silent heartbreak, was now standing before him on his wedding night. With a heavy sigh and reluctant resignation, he stepped outside to confront the specter of his past. At the edge of the manicured grounds, near the wrought iron gate of Ravenwood Court, a solitary figure stood shrouded in the dim glow of twilight. It was Elena. Though transformed by time, she appeared thinner, her once bright eyes now shadowed by sorrow and anxiety, her cheeks stained with the residue of tears. Opening the smaller gate with hesitant resolve, Grayson approached her. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his tone curt as he took in her tear-streaked face. "Alina," she whispered, her voice trembling with remorse and unspoken apologies. "I know you just got married. I know I hurt you back then, and I'm sure you're still angry with me." Before he could muster a reply, she continued in a faltering yet determined tone, "But I'm here because, please, I need your help." Her words hung in the cool night air, laden with urgency that he could not ignore. "Help with what?" Grayson interrupted, his tone skeptical, yet laced with an undercurrent of concern. "My daughter, Isla, she needs a blood transfusion. Urgently. A terrible accident, a car collided with our home and she's in critical condition," Elena explained, her voice cracking as she recounted the ordeal. Grayson's brow furrowed in disbelief. "You have a child?" he murmured, struggling to reconcile the image of the past with the startling reality before him. Elena's tearful nod and the raw emotion in her eyes told a story of desperation and love that transcended old wounds. "Please, I'm begging you," she pleaded. "I wouldn't be here if it weren't absolutely dire. I'm terrified of losing her." After a long, agonizing pause, Grayson's expression hardened as he muttered, "Fine, wait here, I'll get my car." With that, he dashed back inside Ravenwood Court, leaving behind a furious Vanessa, whose eyes burned with betrayal and confusion. The night deepened as Grayson drove through the rain-slicked roads toward the hospital. A journey marked by a silent reckoning with choices long made. Elena clutched his arm as they sped along the deserted streets, her grip a desperate testament to a mother's undying love. In the sterile corridors of the hospital, every second felt like an eternity. Grayson's mind whirled with conflicting emotions as he followed Elena into a private room, where Margaret had been standing, her face etched with worry and guarded hope. "Grayson?" Margaret began softly, but he barely registered her words as his attention was inexorably drawn to the frail, pale figure of a little girl lying on a hospital bed. The child, with features uncannily reminiscent of him, stirred something deep within his guarded heart. Turning to Elena, whose eyes remained downcast, he demanded in a strained voice, "What is this? Why does she look like me?" The question was heavy with unspoken confessions and unresolved histories. Elena, struggling to meet his gaze, murmured, "Later, I will explain everything, after you donate blood. Please, Grayson, I'm begging you. I can't lose her." With no time to spare, Grayson submitted to the urgent medical procedures. He followed the medical staff's instructions with mechanical precision, his face a mask of conflicted duty as he sat for the blood donation. The process, fraught with the gravity of unspoken truths, left him haunted by the realization that every drop of his blood now carried a weight of fate. When he emerged from the procedure, he found Elena slumped in a chair, her face etched with the exhaustion and sorrow of too many unspoken goodbyes. "I've done it," he stated flatly, as if declaring a bitter victory over the demons of the past. Elena's eyes welled up with a blend of relief and gratitude, and she whispered a fragile thank you. Yet, before they could exchange further words, Grayson's expression hardened once more as he grasped her arm firmly. "We need to talk, Elena," he declared, his tone resolute and tinged with lingering hurt. "Do you think you can simply walk away after I've done this for your child?" His voice, though low, carried the weight of years of regret and the scars of a love that was both lost and never fully mended. As the two of them stood in the quiet solitude of that private hospital room, the present collided violently with the past. Every heartbeat resonated with memories of a time when choices were made in haste and love was as fragile as glass. Yet, in that charged moment, the unyielding reality was clear. Despite the tangled web of their history, the urgent need to save a life could not be postponed. The destiny of a little girl now hung in the balance, and the only way forward was through a painful reunion of hearts long separated by circumstance. Grayson's conflicted eyes finally met Elena's, and in that silent exchange lay a deep understanding, a promise of explanations yet to come, and a shared hope that maybe, just maybe, the past could be reconciled with the present. As he turned once more to tend to the small, fragile life before him, he could not shake the awareness that the reunion was as inevitable as it was painful, and that the future, uncertain and wrought with scars, was slowly beginning to weave a new story out of the remnants of what once was. In the tense, dim glow of the hospital corridor, Elena's trembling hand reached out to steady the fraying edges of her resolve as she tried to explain herself to Grayson. Her voice was soft but edged with determination when she pleaded, "Let's talk another time. I'm sorry for bothering you right now." Yet Grayson's eyes, burning with a mixture of indignation and hurt, tightened as he gripped his phone and then his own emotion. "Answer me," he insisted, his tone low but insistent. "Whose child is that?" His words hung in the sterile air, heavy with unresolved history and fresh pain. With a choked breath and a swallow that betrayed the agony in her throat, Elena managed to murmur, "She's mine." The shock of the admission lit a blaze in Grayson's eyes. "She's yours?" he repeated, the disbelief mingling with a sudden surge of protective fury. "Mine? I'm her father, aren't I? Tell me she's my daughter." His voice, though laced with the remnants of past tenderness, now echoed with a desperate need for clarity, a need to reconcile the past with the present. Before Elena could muster a word in response, an outcry shattered the fragile pause. "Grayson!" a voice shouted. Both turned sharply to see Vanessa, her face a mask of fury and betrayal, storming into the scene. Her eyes, wide with disbelief, locked onto Elena with a searing glare. "How dare you steal my husband?" she spat, her words dripping with venom. Vanessa lunged forward, as if propelled by a torrent of emotions, yet Grayson quickly interposed himself between them. "We just got married," Vanessa shrieked, her voice quivering with indignation as she pointed an accusing finger at Elena. Despite Grayson's attempt to calm the brewing storm with a soft plea, "Stop, Vanessa, we're not doing anything wrong." Vanessa's anger only escalated. "Maybe you aren't," she retorted, "but she is. She's shameless, seducing you like this. Don't you forget I'm your wife." The stinging words cut through the charged atmosphere, and Elena, recognizing the overwhelming hostility, backed away slowly. Her voice barely above a whisper, she murmured, "I don't want any trouble," before slipping into the secluded room where her daughter lay recovering. Inside that quiet, dim room, Elena allowed herself a moment to catch her breath. The weight of the day pressed down on her, but her resolve to save her child remained steadfast. She had no desire to dismantle a marriage that had long been in tatters. Her only wish was to ensure that her daughter, Isla, would be safe and cared for. Now that Grayson was aware of Isla's existence, there was no more room for secrets, yet she also refused to let her child be swept away into a family dynamic that did not feel like her own. The conflict was not one of desire for retribution, but of a desperate maternal instinct set against a backdrop of complicated pasts and uncertain futures. As time wore on, the doctor's announcement broke the heavy silence. "The transfusion was successful," he declared, his tone measured and clinical. "Isla's color has improved." Relief mingled with exhaustion in Elena's eyes as she watched her little girl stir and then awaken, her delicate voice softly calling out, "Mommy!" In that moment, as Elena cradled Isla close, the child's innocent query, "Why are you crying?" punctured the haze of grief and fear. Elena, fighting back the swell of tears, forced a gentle laugh and said, "Not crying. I just got a bit of dust in my eyes." Yet the fragile facade could not conceal the emotional storm within her. Isla, with the untroubled wisdom of a child, continued, "I had a dream. It was so nice. My daddy hugged me. Do I have a daddy like the other kids?" The innocence of her words cut through Elena's heart, and before she could reply, the door opened softly. Margaret entered, her eyes betraying both worry and the weight of 1,000 unspoken words, followed closely by Grayson. At that moment, Elena's eyes met her mother's. Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line of apprehension. Elena sighed, accepting that the moment of reckoning had finally arrived. With measured care, Elena took the small fruit and a few toys from Grayson's outstretched arms, a silent offering meant to soothe the child's confusion, and Margaret slipped away to give them a moment of privacy. Grayson's gaze, heavy with conflicting emotions, rested on Isla, whose eyes shone with a mix of curiosity and delight. Elena crouched down beside her daughter and said softly, "Sweetheart, you asked about your daddy, right?" She then turned her tender gaze towards Grayson before returning it to the child, adding, "Here he is." Isla's eyes widened in wonder as she whispered, "Really? You're my daddy?" She looked from Grayson to Elena, as if seeking confirmation of a truth too beautiful and too complex to fully grasp. Grayson's eyes glistened with emotion as he replied gently, "Yes, I'm your father." In that moment, Elena watched the undeniable conflict play across his face, a mingling of regret, relief, and an overwhelming sorrow for the 4 years lost, years stolen by time and circumstance. The little girl's smile shone brightly as she inquired eagerly, "Are you going to stay here with us so I can see you all the time?" With an almost imperceptible nod, Grayson answered softly, "Yes, I'll make sure of it." Realizing that their reunion, as painful as it was, needed space to breathe, Elena quietly excused herself, leaving Grayson and Isla to share a few precious, tentative moments together. Standing alone in the quiet hallway, Elena closed her eyes, trying to steady her heart, which pounded like a wild drum. She knew, deep down, that Grayson deserved the truth about his daughter, even if it meant dredging up old wounds. She silently vowed, he'll be a father to Isla, but he's married, a painful truth that hovered over every conversation between them. In the days that followed, the hospital slowly transformed from a place of anguish into one of fragile hope. A few days later, Isla was declared fully recovered and was cleared to leave. Elena carried her daughter out of the hospital, watching as Isla waved cheerfully goodbye to the nurses who had tended to her with gentle care. "Are you happy, sweetheart?" Isla asked tenderly, to which Isla chirped in a bright, innocent voice, "Yes, Mommy. I have new toys and now I have a daddy." The words, though filled with childlike joy, sent a ripple of sorrow through Elena, each syllable a reminder of the irreversible changes in their lives. Her smile faltered at the mention of Isla's father. The reality that Grayson was now married pressed heavily upon her, and it seemed impossible that the three of them could ever be a complete family again. Isla, too young to comprehend the complexities of love and loss, simply absorbed the moment, her bright eyes unburdened by adult dilemmas. That evening, as Elena prepared to leave the modest apartment she had reclaimed for herself, she noticed Grayson's car idling outside. Unexpectedly, it was his, not Margaret's. A moment of hesitation gripped her, confusion and a tinge of worry swirled inside her as she wondered why her mother had not arrived. Before she could voice her doubts, Grayson stepped forward, taking their bags with a resolute grip and placing them carefully in his car's trunk. "Come on," he said, his voice firm yet laced with urgency. Elena's protest was soft yet insistent. "Hold on, Grayson. Someone was supposed to pick us up." Yet Grayson's reply was curt. "There's no time to worry about appearances or protocols. Trust me." With that, he took her hand, pulling her forward as if the next moments depended on swift action alone. Isla, ever the beacon of innocent delight, beamed at the sight of her father as he opened the passenger door. With some reluctance and lingering hesitation, Elena, still cradling Isla in her arms, climbed into the car. As the car pulled away, Elena, unable to contain her curiosity any longer, softly asked, "Grayson, where are you taking us? I thought I gave you my new address." His grip on the steering wheel tightened imperceptibly as he replied, "You're not living there anymore." Confused and anxious, Elena pressed, "Why not?" Grayson's eyes, dark and determined, met hers. "I'm not letting my daughter stay in an unsafe neighborhood. You and Isla will both live with me." The declaration left Elena silent, the weight of his words sinking in slowly. A sense of unease pervaded her, knowing full well the complications that such a decision would bring. "So, we're going to stay with you and Vanessa?" she ventured hesitantly. Grayson's tone then sharpened as he countered. "That's your concern? I won't let you or Isla be in danger. Besides, this is your fault for leaving me and letting everything come to this." Elena's heart sank with his accusation, leaving her to wonder whether Grayson would allow Vanessa to continue disrespecting their fragile connection. Deep inside, she understood that Vanessa, as his wife, had every right to be upset, yet the bitterness of lost time and broken promises gnawed at her. After a long drive, they finally arrived at a sprawling estate, a place so different from the modest shelter Elena had known. The automatic gate swung open with a whisper, revealing a long manicured driveway leading to an expansive front yard. As Elena's eyes took in the vast property, she could scarcely believe how far Grayson had come. It was a life of opulence and grandeur, so starkly contrasting with the simple days they once shared. She found herself wondering if any of this success would have been possible if they had stayed together in their youth, if the tapestry of their shared past had not been so violently unraveled. "Let's go inside," Grayson said, and Elena followed him inside, her senses overwhelmed by the lavish interior. The living room was enormous, filled with elegant furnishings and adorned with luxurious decor. Isla, ever the curious spirit, squealed with delight at the sight of a corner filled with an assortment of toys that resembled a miniature playground. "Want to play?" Grayson asked her daughter in a warm, inviting tone. "Yes, Daddy," Isla replied happily, raising her tiny hand for him to pick her up. Standing back, Elena watched the scene with a bittersweet mix of relief and sorrow. Her heart felt simultaneously light and burdened by the beauty and the tragedy of the moment. After spending about an hour inside the estate, Grayson excused himself to presumably attend to matters with Vanessa. Elena, though tempted to ask questions and seek clarity about their complicated situation, chose to remain silent. She needed time to process the cascading events, to understand whether Grayson's family would eventually accept Isla, or if Vanessa's bitterness would forever cloud their fragile reunion. Later, when Margaret arrived, Elena explained that Grayson had insisted they live in his home, a proposition that Margaret acknowledged with a nod. "It might be easier for you," Margaret offered gently. "Just keep your distance from any trouble. He only wants to be a father." Days turned into a month, and during this period, Grayson never returned to the modest apartment where Elena had found solace. Instead, he continued to support Isla financially, paying the bills and even employing a housekeeper to manage the estate. Elena, though grateful for the support, couldn't help but feel the silent void of his absence. They were not a couple anymore, just two lives connected by the undeniable bond of parenthood. One day, after a long, exhausting day at work, Elena unexpectedly ran into Natalie on the street. With a teasing lilt in her voice, Natalie asked, "So, did you get back together with Grayson?" Elena shook her head with a rueful smile and said, "He's married, Natalie. Why would I get back together with him? He just donated blood for Isla." Natalie smirked, adding a light-hearted, "Sure, maybe there'll be a second baby soon." Poor Vanessa. The comment stirred a mix of discomfort and defiance in Elena, who curtly replied, "Let's not talk about her. She's irrelevant to my life." At around 5 in the afternoon, Elena had planned to go home after another taxing day at work. However, the demands of her job forced her to stay later than anticipated. By the time she finally left the office, around 6 in the evening, she decided to stop by a local grocery store to pick up dinner supplies. While waiting in line near the checkout, she overheard two women gossiping in hushed, excited tones. "Did you hear Vanessa and Grayson split up?" one woman whispered. "No way! They've only been married a week or so," the other replied incredulously. The notion that such a split could happen so quickly sent a shudder through Elena, and she instinctively froze as they mentioned Grayson's name. For a moment, memories of his month-long absence flooded her mind. Was it possible that the breakup was due to her and Isla? Or were there other issues lurking beneath the surface? Choosing not to dwell on the unsettling conversation, she quickly paid for her groceries and made her way straight home. The moment Elena stepped through the door of her modest apartment, a joyful, familiar sound reached her ears. Isla's laughter, pure and unburdened, echoed through the living room. Smiling, Elena quickened her pace, curious about what had ignited such happiness in her little girl. However, when she reached the living room, she abruptly froze. There, standing in the soft glow of the evening light, was Grayson. His eyes met hers with a mixture of determination and vulnerability, and before Elena could process the shock, Isla rushed forward, calling out, "Mommy!" Forcing a smile, Elena scooped up her daughter in a tender embrace. "Oh, baby Isla," she murmured softly. "What's going on?" Isla giggled and replied with the innocent clarity only a child could muster. "Daddy said he's staying here with us." The words struck Elena like a thunderbolt. "You're staying here? But you have a wife," she said, her voice trembling as she searched Grayson's eyes for an explanation. In response, Grayson's gaze hardened ever so slightly as he declared, "We're separated now." Elena blinked in disbelief. "Legally separated after just a week of marriage? That isn't easy, Grayson," she managed to say, her voice heavy with both shock and sorrow. Grayson's eyes narrowed, and with a quiet yet firm resolve, he replied, "It's not easy, but I can do it. I stayed away for a month to get it done." Elena pressed her lips together, her heart aching with the realization of how irreversibly tangled their lives had become. "Fine," she whispered. "I guess it's your life." Yet Grayson's tone softened as he continued. "But as long as I'm here, you must understand the rumors that will spread. People might call me a home wrecker." He studied her face carefully, as if searching for a sign of understanding or forgiveness. Elena's voice was gentle but resolute when she finally responded, "You really don't want me here, do you?" She swallowed hard, her voice low and full of pain. "It's not that. I just believe you can still be a father to Isla without leaving your wife." At that, Grayson tensed visibly, the internal conflict evident on his face. "Are you saying it's okay for me to remain married and just visit my daughter? Is that how little you think of me?" he demanded, his tone a mix of indignation and despair. Isla, sensing the tension, glanced between her parents, her small face creased in confusion. "Mommy? Daddy? Are you fighting?" she asked innocently. Elena quickly knelt down beside her, softly reassuring, "No, sweetheart, we're not fighting. Fighting is bad." Even as she tried to smile and soothe her daughter, the undercurrents of bitterness and sorrow were undeniable. Later that night, as the household settled into a quiet lull, Grayson took on the tender role of a father, gently tucking Isla into bed. With the soft rhythm of her breathing as a backdrop, Elena cleared her throat and, in a hushed tone, inquired, "So, it's true? You're completely separated from Vanessa?" Grayson nodded solemnly, confirming her worst fears. He said simply, "I'm separated. This marriage was a mistake from the start. Now that I know about my daughter, I can't remain locked in that arrangement any longer." Elena shook her head in dismay. "There must be more to it. Legal separation is a big step, and your family won't make it easy." Stepping closer, lowering his voice to a confidential murmur, Grayson replied, "I don't care about that anymore. The moment you showed me Isla, there was no going back. I won't lose any more time." Elena's heart pounded as she swallowed hard, her voice barely audible. "You'll create a scandal, Grayson. People will say," she began, but he cut her off with a look that conveyed his determination to proceed regardless of the consequences. In the deepening twilight of unresolved passion and shattered promises, the charged atmosphere between Elena and Grayson reached an unbearable crescendo. Their conversation, already laden with years of regret and longing, escalated as Grayson's tone hardened with a fierce resolve. "You assured me that you used Isla to push me away," he accused bitterly, his voice echoing with the wounds of the past. "That I was nothing more than a pawn in your desperate bid to sever us." His words, heavy with accusation, cut through the lingering silence of the dim room like a knife through fragile glass. Before Elena could muster a retort, Grayson's motherly admonition spilled forth. "Won't your mother speak for you?" he interjected sharply, his eyes never leaving hers. Yet, Elena, with trembling determination, replied, "I don't care about the rumors." The tension coiled between them as Grayson studied her intently, his gaze searching her face for any sign of remorse or hidden truth. "Unless you're afraid I'll try to win you back too," he pressed, his tone softening into a teasing challenge. "Are you scared that you might fall in love with me all over again?" The question hung in the air, laden with vulnerability and unspoken desire. And for a moment, Elena's eyes went wide with shock at the implication. Desperate to maintain her dignity and emotional distance, she tried to pull away, yet Grayson's grip on her arm was firm and reassuring. "Relax," he murmured, his voice low and conspiratorial. "I'm not going to ambush you, not until my separation is finalized." His attempt at levity, though meant to diffuse the charged moment, only further unsettled Elena. "Don't joke like that," she snapped, a mixture of indignation and hurt coloring her tone. With that, Grayson released her arm and turned away, leaving an aching silence in his wake. "Don't worry," he called back over his shoulder. "I'm not the same college kid you left behind. I have the freedom to do as I please now." Despite the lingering bitterness that punctuated his words, a part of Elena understood the weight of his transformation and the struggle that had driven him to become the man he was today. In that moment, she chose to let him have his moment of reckoning, accepting that, after all, it was his own house, a sanctuary where he could spend time with Isla. And it meant Margaret, her mother, could finally rest from the endless rounds of babysitting. In the soft glow of early morning, the family routine began to weave its way into their newly entangled lives. One gentle morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the modest windows, Elena tenderly kissed Isla's forehead. "Mommy has to go to work now, sweetie. Be good for Grandma," she said in a hushed, caring tone. Isla, with the innocence that only a child can possess, beamed up at her and replied, "Yes, Mommy," wrapping her little arms around Margaret's leg as if to hold on to a piece of home. At that moment, Elena glanced over her shoulder to find Grayson watching her with an intensity that stirred both comfort and anxiety in her heart. "You'll be home by 5, won't you?" he asked, his voice gentle but filled with an undercurrent of expectation. Nodding softly, she promised, "Yes, I will." Grayson added, with a tender smile directed at Isla, "Then we can have dinner together. Come home on time, please." Her response was a soft whisper, laden with hope and trepidation as she left for her job. As the day wore on, the rhythm of life continued unabated. Elena's co-worker Lily couldn't help but notice the hurried look that clung to her as the clock neared 5. "You're clocking out now?" Lily inquired with a knowing smile, watching Elena gather her belongings. "You have plans for dinner, don't you?" Lily prodded gently. With a half smile, Elena turned and replied, "How did you know?" Lily nodded toward Elena's phone, where a message notification from an unregistered number flashed on the screen. "Unregistered number," she mused, then read aloud, "Hey, this is Grayson. Make sure to be home by 5 p.m., Elena." The words were delivered in a tone that mixed authority with a tender familiarity, and Lily couldn't help but grin. "Is that from him? So you two have dinner plans, huh? You and Grayson, back together now?" Lily teased. Quickly, Elena shook her head and switched off her phone, trying desperately to ignore the teasing. "Stop saying that," she chided, feeling the sting of every word. "Earlier you mentioned Grayson and Vanessa are legally separated, but that doesn't mean everything is resolved. They're still technically married." Lily rolled her eyes. "He's obviously serious about you," she countered, adding with a conspiratorial wink. "I mean, you two have a child. Didn't he skip his wedding night bliss to rush to the hospital for your daughter? That's huge. Maybe Grayson saw that as his chance to leave Vanessa sooner." Elena sighed, her heart heavy with memories and unspoken regrets. "Let's not talk about them," she murmured, resigning herself to the complexities of their shared past. With that, she clocked out exactly at 5, her mind awash with 1,000 conflicting thoughts. Upon arriving home that evening, Elena was greeted by an unexpected, heartwarming scene. Margaret, Grayson, and little Isla were all gathered around the dining table, which was set with an array of delicious dishes that filled the room with a homely, comforting aroma. "What's all this?" Elena asked, placing her bag down on a nearby chair in disbelief. Grayson, with a cautious look in his eyes, replied softly, "Don't you remember?" At that moment, Isla, with her bright, curious eyes, piped up cheerfully, "Mommy, it's your birthday today!" Elena's eyes widened in shock as the realization dawned upon her. Suddenly, a party popper burst overhead, sending a shower of confetti across the room, and a housekeeper wheeled in a small cake with a single flickering candle. "Happy birthday to you," they all chorused in unison. The unexpected celebration left Elena overwhelmed, a flood of emotion surging through her. "Happy birthday to you! Happy birthday, Mommy!" sang Isla, her small voice filled with unreserved joy as she ran forward to embrace her mother. Tears welled in Elena's eyes as she whispered, "I could have sworn my birthday was tomorrow." Margaret, with a gentle smile, reminded her softly, "You've been so busy with work you lost track of the date." Elena turned toward Grayson, seeking an explanation, but he only offered her a level, unreadable stare. Isla, ever the innocent beacon of warmth, urged her, "Make a wish and blow out the candle, Mommy." With trembling resolve, Elena leaned in, blew out the candle, and as the room erupted into applause, she allowed herself a moment of bittersweet celebration. For years, Elena had avoided celebrating her birthday, haunted by the painful memories of the day she ended things with Grayson, a day that had come to symbolize loss and regret. Yet, here, in this unexpected moment, with Grayson by her side for Isla's sake and a loving family gathered around, she forced herself not to dwell on the past. Instead, she embraced the present, even though a part of her remained acutely aware of the sweetness and the sorrow intermingling in the air. Months passed slowly after that day. Grayson continued to reside in the lavish house they now shared, and remarkably, no one came to stir up trouble. Neither Vanessa nor Grayson's formidable mother, Mrs. Genevieve, had made an appearance. Elena often found herself pondering the mystery of how Grayson had managed to secure such an oasis of peace in the midst of turbulent separations, especially when his divorce proceedings were still in limbo. Late one night, with the moon casting gentle shadows on the terrace, Elena found herself alone and lost in thought. The silence was broken by the soft footsteps of Grayson, who joined her on the cool stone bench. "Elena," he began quietly, his voice almost tender, "can you consider quitting your job?" Surprised by his proposal, she frowned. "Huh? Why?" he pressed, his eyes fixed on hers with a sincerity that both unsettled and intrigued her. "It'd be better if you just stayed home with our daughter," he continued, his tone earnest. "I just want you here, with Isla and me, as a family." Elena swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his request. "Why would you say that?" she asked hesitantly, struggling to articulate the jumble of emotions swirling within her. Grayson's gaze never wavered as he asked bluntly, "Do you love me, Elena?" The question, so direct and raw, made her heart pound in her chest. In the months that he had stayed with them, she had seen glimpses of the tender care he bestowed on Isla, the way he prepared breakfast with a quiet joy, the routine of picking her up from work every day, and the lingering gaze he cast her way, a look that seemed to speak of a love that transcended the boundaries of fatherhood. Though he insisted that his acts of kindness were solely for Isla's sake, the warmth in his eyes suggested otherwise. Elena averted her gaze, feeling the sting of unspoken truths. "I can't answer that," she mumbled, her voice barely a whisper. Grayson's voice dropped even lower, laden with an urgency that bordered on despair. "You know I'm not here only for my daughter," he said. "You once told me I was free to see my child, but that's not the only reason I'm doing this. Marrying Vanessa was a mistake that cost us 4 precious years. If only you had told me you were pregnant long ago, we wouldn't have lost that time. I would have married you then, not her." His words, filled with regret and longing, hung heavily between them. Drawing closer, he lowered his voice to a conspiratorial murmur. "Now that I know the truth, I can't let go. I belong with you, Elena. You own my heart. I want to hear you say that you still love me." Elena's eyes fell to the floor, tears prickling her lashes. "Even if I say yes," she whispered, "that doesn't fix anything. Your parents will never accept me. I'll always be seen as the woman who ruined your marriage. I'm not from a wealthy family." Gently, Grayson cupped her face in his hands, his own tears silently betraying the pain of years lost and battles fought. "I love you, Elena," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "Everything I have, every ounce of success I've earned, I did because of you. I wanted to return to you as an equal, to show you that I can build a life worthy of your love. I'm sorry if I hurt you by marrying Vanessa, but that is all behind us now. I'm waiting for the final divorce papers to make it official. Will you wait for me?" With a shaky exhale, Elena wiped away her tears and hesitantly nodded. A bright grin spread across Grayson's face, and in a playful moment she tapped him lightly on the arm. "Ouch," he protested, eliciting a small, reluctant laugh from her. "No more sweetness for me until the divorce is final," she declared, half in jest and half in earnest. Grayson's eyes sparkled with a mixture of mischief and determination. "But that could take years, babe," he teased. Blushing at his choice of endearment, Elena playfully jumped to her feet and retorted, "You're rich, aren't you? Maybe you can speed things up." With a final, bright smile, she added, now let me be. And so they continued living together, their days punctuated by moments of heated argument and tender reconciliation as they focused on being the best parents for Isla. Plans soon took shape as they decided to enroll Isla in school come autumn. Grayson persisted in urging Elena to resign from her job, convinced that she deserved more time at home, not only to care for their daughter but also to rediscover the bond they once shared. Their discussions grew more frequent and intense, with each argument giving way to moments of unexpected understanding. Ultimately, Elena conceded and quit her job, a decision that her co-worker Lily met with a teasing, "You're going to be a full-time mom and a loving partner now." Lily's voice carried a genuine note of happiness as she helped Elena pack up her office belongings. Elena managed a small laugh and said, "It's time to focus on Isla, I guess. And you're right, Grayson is more than capable of supporting us." As Lily nodded in agreement, she added, "He's so successful now with all those businesses you built him up to believe in. It must have taken a lot after you left him on your birthday." The reminder stung, for that very day had been the catalyst for so much heartache. "That was a cold move," Lily remarked, shaking her head sympathetically. "Probably drove him to prove himself, just to get you back." Elena simply shook her head, finished packing and said her goodbyes to her co-workers, stepping out into the crisp evening air with a box of personal items clutched tightly to her chest. Just as she was about to merge with the bustling sidewalk, a sudden brutal tug at her hair startled her. "Hey, ow!" she cried out as a stinging slap landed squarely on her cheek, sending her reeling. Stumbling onto the concrete, Elena looked up in dismay and horror. Before her stood Vanessa, Grayson's bitter ex-graffiti in fury, her eyes ablaze with hatred. Beside Vanessa, the imposing figure of Grayson's mother, Mrs. Genevieve, held Vanessa's arm with an air of imperious authority. "I said that's enough," Mrs. Genevieve barked, her voice stern and unyielding as she tried to calm the raging storm that was Vanessa. But Vanessa, seething with venom, glowered at Elena. "You worthless woman," she spat, her voice trembling with raw emotion. "You should have sided with me, Mrs. Genevieve, not with Grayson. I still love him, and I'm only trying to steer him back to me. Look at you, still clinging to my son. It must be nice to shack up with a billionaire." Elena's own temper flared in the face of such bitter accusations. "I never used our daughter as a pawn," she retorted, her voice firm yet trembling with suppressed emotion. "Do not accuse me of something so vile." The confrontation escalated swiftly as Vanessa's furious eyes bore into Elena's soul. "Get up," Vanessa demanded harshly. "We're going to talk." Reluctantly, Elena pressed a hand to her stinging cheek, her mind racing as she tried to comprehend why Grayson's mother and his ex had suddenly descended upon her, disrupting the fragile calm of her life. Fear and confusion intermingled as they led her toward a small, secluded private house. Once inside that cramped room, the atmosphere was thick with tension. They forced Elena to sit on a chair, arranged in a semicircle facing the angry pair. "Calm down, Vanessa," Mrs. Genevieve urged, her tone attempting to assert control while noticing the tremble in Vanessa's voice. "How can you expect to calm down when you're so wound up?" Vanessa snapped back, her words laced with bitterness. "Grayson and I split up. Our divorce was finalized so quickly because of this very woman." Vanessa's accusation was a torrent of rage as she pointed an accusing finger at Elena. "He never even touched me. And now, you're living with him? How pathetic. It must be nice to live with a billionaire while I'm left with nothing but regret." Elena's heart pounded furiously as she tried to maintain her composure. "I never used Isla to lure him away from you," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside her. "Do not accuse me of something I never did." As the confrontation continued, the voices in the room mingled with bitter memories and the harsh reality of shattered relationships. The room, though small and unassuming, became a battleground where every word was a weapon and every accusation a wound that threatened to reopen old scars. In that stifling, charged atmosphere, the voices of the past clashed with the uncertain promises of the future. The painful echoes of lost years, of a love once vibrant, now marred by bitterness and misunderstanding, reverberated against the walls. Even as Mrs. Genevieve's admonitions and Vanessa's venomous tirade filled the space, Elena's resolve remained unbroken. Deep within her, amidst the hurt and betrayal, a steadfast love for Isla and a desperate hope for a better future burned quietly. In the dim corridors of an opulent mansion, where resentment and longing intermingled like bitter wine, the charged confrontation reached a boiling point. Grayson's voice, once tender and protective, now trembled with a mixture of anger and disbelief as he leveled his accusations at Elena. "I only went to you that night because our daughter needed a blood transfusion," he declared, his words echoing through the hushed room, laden with the memories of lost time and desperate measures. "Grayson was the father. I would have done anything to save her life." His tone, though harsh, carried the weight of a man who had endured years of separation, pain, and regret, a truth that cut deeper than any harsh word could. Vanessa's voice, quivering with contempt and disbelief, interjected, "That's all?" Her words, laced with scorn, hung in the air as if to punctuate every syllable with derision. "Oh, sure," she sneered, her tone mocking the sincerity of Grayson's confession. "But guess what? Grayson's living with you now, isn't he? You really think I'm that stupid?" The words were an accusation not only at Elena's past decisions, but also at the choices that had led to this convoluted present. At that moment, Mrs. Genevieve Grayson's imperious mother, known for her steely demeanor and unyielding expectations, stepped forward with a cold finality. "That's enough," she said flatly, her voice brooking no argument. Turning her icy gaze upon Elena, she spat. "I don't like you. You know that." Her words, delivered with the precision of a scalpel, sliced through the remnants of hope that might have clung to Elena's heart. "I never wanted my son to end up with someone like you. After you left, we finally had our peace and quiet," Mrs. Genevieve continued, her tone as sharp as broken glass. Elena's stomach twisted with anxiety as the barrage of insults continued. "I know you don't want to return to how miserable things were before, do you?" Mrs. Genevieve pressed on, her eyes narrowing as she searched for any sign of contrition in Elena's expression. Elena, caught in the crossfire of bitter memories and harsh truths, remained silent. The only sound was the soft hum of the mansion's air conditioning and the distant rhythmic ticking of an antique clock, a relentless reminder of time lost and opportunities squandered. After a long, heavy pause, Mrs. Genevieve let out a long sigh, her tone softening just enough to reveal a flicker of reluctant compassion. "I'm not completely heartless," she admitted, though her eyes remained hard and unyielding. "I'll give you an easy way out. Take your child and disappear. Go abroad if you must." Her words, meant as a cruel gift, were delivered with a finality that left no room for negotiation. "Just leave Grayson. I don't want my son's hard-earned money wasted on a woman like you, and I certainly don't want a grandchild whose mother is beneath us. Understand?" At these words, Elena's anger flared anew. "You're a terrible mother," she shot back, her voice trembling with both fury and hurt. The air between them crackled with the intensity of long-held grievances as Mrs. Genevieve's eyes narrowed even further. "What did you say?" she demanded, her tone a dangerous mix of hurt and wrath. "You heard me," Elena spat defiantly, her words echoing off the ornate walls. "Look, a mother should want her child's happiness, but you," Mrs. Genevieve's voice rose as she continued, "you just want to control Grayson, to bend him to your will. I see why he was desperate to leave your home back then." With that, in a flash of uncontrolled anger, Mrs. Genevieve lunged forward and slapped Elena across the face. The blow was so fierce that it split Elena across the face, and crimson droplets escaped as blood trickled down her chin. "How dare you speak to me like that?" Elena cried out, her voice cracking with both pain and defiance. Mrs. Genevieve's eyes blazed with cruelty as she sneered. "You have nothing to offer my son. You're just a parasite, desperate to latch on to his fortune." Elena clutched her throbbing cheek, the sting of the slap mingling with the deeper ache of betrayal. In a further act of disdain, Mrs. Genevieve rummaged through her designer purse and produced a check, slamming it onto the mahogany table with a resounding thud. "10 million, she declared, her voice dripping with derision. "Take it and leave with your daughter." Elena stared, her eyes wide in disbelief, as if the very idea of monetary compensation could erase the wounds of her soul. Noticing her stunned silence, Mrs. Genevieve's tone grew even more scornful. "What, not enough for you? Fine, 20 million. Just get out of his life." Her words were interrupted abruptly when the heavy door burst open and all eyes turned toward the entrance. There, framed in the doorway with fury etched on every line of his face, stood Grayson. His presence was like a sudden gust of wind, dispelling the tension in the room, yet his expression was cold and determined. "Grayson," Mrs. Genevieve stammered, her composure shattering as she turned pale. What are you doing here?" Grayson strode forward, his gaze fixed unyieldingly on his mother. You can stand? You don't have a serious illness?" he demanded, his voice quivering with disbelief and hurt as he looked from his mother to Vanessa, noting the fresh bruises on his own arms, a testament to the violent scuffle that had erupted. "You both lied to force me into a marriage I never wanted," he said coldly, his tone devoid of any lingering affection. Unbelievable. At that moment, Mrs. Genevieve's facade of authority crumbled as tears welled in her eyes. "I did it because Vanessa and I wanted you to," she began, but Grayson's harsh cry cut her off. "Shut up," he snapped, stepping around her to reach Alina. In a gesture filled with both tenderness and urgency, he gently cupped Alina's bloody cheek, his thumb brushing against her cut lip. "What happened? Why did you come here alone with them?" he asked softly, his concern genuine despite the anger simmering beneath his words. Alina winced as she met his questioning gaze. "I didn't want a scene at the office," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "I never expected any of this." Before Vanessa could interject once more with a weak plea, "Grayson, let me explain." He glared at her, his eyes cold and resolute. "We're done, Vanessa. Stay out of my sight. You and I have nothing more to say to each other," he declared, leaving no room for further argument. Without waiting for a reply, Grayson scooped Elena into his arms in a tender, almost chivalrous gesture reminiscent of a bridegroom carrying his betrothed, and headed decisively for the door. In a moment that defied the chaos of the confrontation, Elena gasped in surprise as she noticed Mrs. Genevieve's bodyguards sprawled unconscious on the floor, a clear sign that Grayson had men of his own, loyal and unafraid to fight for what he believed was right. Once outside, in the cool night air punctuated by the hum of passing cars, Grayson ushered Elena into the back seat of his sleek black car. His own guards, dressed in sharp black suits, lined up with silent determination, ready to escort them away from the tumult behind. As the car sped away, Grayson's voice, still tight with restrained fury, broke the silence. "So they offered you 20 million to leave me?" he said, his tone both incredulous and seething. "Did you even consider it?" Elena shook her head firmly, her resolve clear despite the lingering pain. "Never," she replied, her voice steady. "I wouldn't steal Haley's father away from her, you know that." His anger simmered under the surface, yet there was a glimmer of something softer, a vulnerability that he struggled to hide. "Good," Grayson murmured, his tone laced with a mixture of relief and possessiveness. "Even if you tried to disappear, I'd find you. And for the record, I have far more than 20 million. They can't buy you off." A small, ironic smile tugged at Elena's lips as she managed to tease, "Congrats on finalizing your divorce, by the way." Her words, though lighthearted, were tinged with a bittersweet acknowledgement of the sacrifices made. Grayson scoffed, replying coolly, "Don't mention it. You know me. When I want something, I make it happen." With that, he gestured to the driver, ordering, "Straight to the hospital." "Hospital? Why?" Elena asked, concern overriding the lingering conflict. "You're bleeding. You need a proper check. Haley's waiting for us." But Grayson shook his head, his tone hard and unwavering. "Now that I'm officially free, you're mine," he declared. "I can be as sweet as I want to you, hold you whenever I want, kiss you whenever I want." His possessiveness was palpable, and although Elena's cheeks flushed with a mix of anger and something else she dared not name, Grayson's eyes softened as he pulled her closer. Gently, he intertwined his fingers with hers and pressed a light, almost tender kiss to her bruised cheek. "Don't forget that," he whispered in her ear, his voice low and insistent. "There's no escape now." When they finally reached the hospital, doctors swiftly attended to Elena's wounds, patching her up with careful professionalism. Meanwhile, Grayson hovered close by, his arms folded protectively around her, as if to shield her from the world's cruelty. After a few moments, when the immediate threat had passed, Elena managed a weak smile and murmured, "I'm sorry. They practically forced me." Grayson's eyes averted slightly before he turned fully toward her, his tone serious and imbued with a quiet urgency. "Elena," he said, "tell me the truth. Did you still love me, even after you left?" Her throat tightened as she hesitated, the words caught between regret and lingering passion. "Why are you?" he pressed, searching her eyes for any sign of denial. "Because I never stopped loving you," she finally whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of all they had endured. "Even when I was angry, deep down I blamed myself for not seeing how my mother bullied you. If I'd known, you wouldn't have disappeared. We could have been married sooner." The confession hung in the sterile hospital air as Grayson reached into his jacket pocket and drew out a small velvet box. Opening it with a reverence born of long-held hope, he revealed a delicate ring that caught the light in a way that seemed almost miraculous. "I've wanted to give you this for so long," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It should have been yours from the start." Elena's eyes widened in astonishment as Grayson held out the ring. Grayson?" she stammered, barely able to process the magnitude of the gesture. With a resolute determination he insisted, "Put it on. It's worth far more than the check my mother waved in your face. I'm not letting you leave me again." Overwhelmed by a torrent of emotions, Elena could only watch as Grayson slipped the ring onto her finger, a silent vow that spoke louder than any words could. "There's nothing you can do but marry me," Grayson declared, his tone firm and resolute. "We have a daughter and I know you love me too. No more hiding." Tears welled in Elena's eyes as she nodded slowly, and when he leaned in closer, she clung to his shoulders, allowing his lips to meet hers in a kiss that was both an apology and a promise. Despite the newfound intimacy, the specter of Grayson's mother still loomed large. Mrs. Genevieve, ever the force of nature, would occasionally corner them in public, pleading to speak with her son. One afternoon, as Grayson was about to take Elena and Isla to a quiet restaurant, Mrs. Genevieve appeared in the parking lot, her voice quavering with a desperate need to reconcile old wounds. "Grayson, please, talk to me," she begged, her eyes red from crying. "I've kicked Vanessa out. There's nothing between us." "I'm alone now," Grayson's face contorted with disgust as he replied. "You think that changes anything for me? You don't control my life anymore." In a flurry of emotion, Elena attempted to lead Isla away to salvage a moment of peace, but Mrs. Genevieve rushed forward, her arms outstretched. Isla clung to Elena in terror, and with a soft, trembling voice, Mrs. Genevieve asked, "Are you my granddaughter?" The child buried her face into Elena's shoulder, confused and frightened. Grayson's tone turned cold as he interjected, "Mom, go home. You're ruining our day." Gently, Elena patted Isla's back, whispering, "It's okay, sweetie, that was your grandma." Once they'd moved a safe distance away, Isla looked up with wide eyes and murmured, "She's scary, Mommy. I thought Grandma Margaret was my only grandma." Elena squeezed her daughter's hand reassuringly. "She's your daddy's mom, so she's your grandma too," she explained softly, though the words did little to erase the tension of the day. Later, Elena took Isla inside the restaurant and found a quiet table, determined to reclaim a semblance of normalcy. Meanwhile, outside in the parking lot, Grayson and Mrs. Genevieve stood face to face. Her eyes were puffy from crying, and she clung desperately to him. "You won't forgive your own mother?" Grayson's voice was as cold as ice. "Not after you manipulated me for so long. I want you to learn that you can't always get what you want. You lied about being sick. You faked needing a wheelchair. You did everything you could to keep me away from Elena. Now you ask for forgiveness? I can't. And the only way you'll ever see me again is if you leave for good. Start over. Dad's waiting for you in California. Go to him. Live quietly there, and maybe one day I'll forgive you." Tears shimmered in Mrs. Genevieve's eyes as she tried to speak, but her voice faltered. Grayson's words, harsh and unyielding, left her with no choice but to accept his ultimatum before he turned and strode into the restaurant. Inside, as Grayson rejoined Elena and Isla flung her arms around his waist and called out, "Daddy!" Grayson picked her up tenderly, his eyes meeting Elena's with a questioning intensity. In that moment, he glanced back through the restaurant window and saw Mrs. Genevieve speaking with a distinguished man outside. A small, sad smile played on his lips as he murmured, "That's my dad," in a voice heavy with resignation. Elena asked softly, "They're going somewhere?" "California," Grayson confirmed quietly. "They'll figure it out." Then, reaching for Elena's hand, he added, "Let's focus on us now." She nodded, and as a waitress approached to take their order, the chaotic day finally began to settle into a fragile peace. Over the course of the next year, Grayson, Elena, and little Isla worked to build a relationship that, while scarred by past hurts, felt solid and unbreakable. Grayson made sure that Elena and Isla wanted for nothing, Every gesture, every act of kindness was imbued with the determination to make up for the 4 lost years. When Isla turned 5, Elena, seeing the happiness in her daughter's eyes and the steadfast love in Grayson's, finally agreed to marry him. On their wedding day, a day filled with both joy and the bittersweet recognition of all that had been sacrificed, Grayson could hardly contain his joy. Their union, forged in the crucible of hardship and renewed hope, symbolized not only a reconciliation of past wounds, but also the promise of a future built on love, resilience, and the shared commitment to protect their daughter at all costs. In the gentle twilight of a new beginning, there was a serenity that had long eluded them, a quiet intimacy unmarred by drama or contrived arrangements. This time, it was just the 2 of them, standing on the precipice of a life reborn, pledging their futures to one another in the presence of their dearest friends and family. The wedding ceremony had been unburdened by the chaos of the past, a graceful culmination of painful separations and tentative reconciliations that finally allowed Grayson and Elena to embrace a shared destiny. A week after the wedding, Grayson prepared a surprise for Elena, one that would test the bounds of her excitement and apprehension. One bright morning, with the lingering scent of fresh flowers in the air and soft music drifting from the open windows of their newly shared home, Grayson took her by the hand and led her outside. Before stepping out into the crisp day, he carefully placed a delicate blindfold over her eyes. The fabric, smooth and cool against her skin, cloaked her world in darkness and anticipation. "Where are we going?" Elena asked, her voice a blend of trembling excitement and a hint of nervous fear. Even in the dark, she could sense the tranquility of their surroundings, an unexpected silence that promised something extraordinary. "Grayson, it's so quiet. I'm freaking out," she managed, her words quivering as she tried to reconcile the excitement with a burgeoning anxiety. "Trust me," Grayson replied softly, his tone imbued with unwavering assurance. "No one's going to leave anyone behind this time." His words were meant to calm her, to remind her that in his arms there was safety and steadfast loyalty. Elena let out a nervous laugh, teasingly chiding him. "We've only been married for a week, and you're already pulling stunts like this. If you scare me too much, I might just file for divorce." Her laughter mingled with exasperation, a light-hearted remark born of a shared history that was as tumultuous as it was tender. Grayson chuckled in response, his eyes sparkling with mischief even behind the soft veil of his reassurance. "Never gonna happen," he said with a confident grin. "I won't ever let you go." His promise, simple yet profound, resonated in the silent morning, echoing the commitment they both yearned to live by. Then, with a flourish, he reached up and removed the blindfold. Elena's breath caught in her throat as her eyes adjusted to the dazzling light. Before her stood a sight so extravagant it seemed lifted from a dream, a sleek, custom helicopter bearing her name in bold, elegant script along its side. "Grayson, is that a helicopter with my name on it?" she gasped, her voice a mix of awe and disbelief. Grayson grinned broadly, his delight infectious. "Yes, you like it?" he asked, his tone teasing and proud all at once. Elena blinked in astonishment, scarcely believing the extravagant token of his affection. "Are you serious right now? You got me a helicopter?" she managed, her words tumbling out as she took in every meticulous detail of the gleaming machine. "Of course," Grayson replied with a casual shrug that belied the magnitude of the gesture. "If you hate it, I can always buy you another brand," he teased, eliciting a playful reaction from Elena. Her mouth hung open for a heartbeat before she recovered, laughing softly. I love it, obviously," she admitted, her eyes twinkling with both joy and a trace of incredulity. Stepping closer, almost reverently, she marveled at the beautiful contraption. "It's breathtaking," she whispered, awe mingling with the warmth that surged through her heart. Grayson gently pulled her toward him, his voice soft and sincere as he murmured, "It's beautiful because you are." The tenderness in his words wrapped around her like a comforting embrace, making the world seem both fragile and infinitely precious. "Come on," he urged, his tone light yet insistent. "Let's take a ride, just you and me." A playful pause followed as Elena's gaze shifted upward in question. "But what about Isla?" she asked, concern threading through her excitement. Grayson pressed a light kiss to her temple, his eyes twinkling with affectionate mischief. "She's staying with Grandma Margaret tonight. We're still newlyweds, remember?" His reassurance melted away any lingering doubt, and with that, he scooped her up in his arms, causing her to let out a delighted squeal. Together, they climbed into the helicopter where the pilot waited patiently for instructions. As the engine hummed to life, a steady thrum filled the air, a sound that echoed the heartbeat of their newfound freedom. Elena's heart pounded, each beat resonating with both exhilaration and the undercurrent of nerves. "Grayson, we're newly married. Don't get us killed, okay?" she joked nervously, her voice laced with half mockery and half pleading concern. Grayson winked, his expression both daring and tender. "I promise we'll make it back safely," he assured her, though with a half smile he added, "Though if we crash, at least we'd die together." His humor, dark yet imbued with a playful affection, coaxed a gentle smirk from Elena as she smacked his shoulder in mock indignation. "Don't even say that," she retorted, her laughter mingling with a deep-seated affection that only grew stronger with each shared adventure. Then, in a gesture that felt like a secret promise between their hearts, Grayson pulled her close and their lips met in a kiss, a soft, lingering union that spoke of years of longing, forgiveness, and rediscovered love. As the helicopter ascended, the ground fell away beneath them, replaced by an expansive vista that stretched into the horizon. Grayson whispered tenderly, intertwining his fingers with hers. "I love you, Elena," he murmured, his voice a blend of hope and quiet determination. "I love you more than words can express." Elena, her eyes sparkling with tears of joy and relief, replied softly, "I love you too." She braced herself against his strong arm as the helicopter soared higher, the world below transforming into a patchwork of vibrant colors and breathtaking landscapes. "Look down," Grayson urged gently. "The view is amazing." Elena lifted her gaze to the window, where the panorama unfolded in a mesmerizing tapestry of rolling hills, sparkling rivers, and clusters of quaint towns that looked like miniature models from a storybook. Her initial fear melted away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of wonder and gratitude for the beauty of the moment. Grayson's embrace tightened, his arms wrapping around her shoulders as he continued, his voice soft and reverent. "I love you, Mrs. Ashford," he murmured against her hair, a tender nickname that symbolized the deep personal bond they had formed. "I'm looking forward to so many more years with you." Elena leaned back, letting herself be enveloped by the warmth of his love and the promise of endless adventures together. In that moment of soaring tranquility, the world seemed to pause, allowing them to savor a peace they had long fought for. The helicopter ride was more than a mere escapade. It was a celebration of their union, a symbolic journey that lifted them from the chaos of the past into a realm where love and hope reigned supreme. The landscape below, illuminated by the soft glow of the setting sun, became a metaphor for their future. A horizon filled with possibility, where every challenge could be overcome as long as they faced it together. Their ride concluded all too quickly, and as the helicopter descended towards a private helipad nestled on the outskirts of a charming new locale called Evergreen Vale, a place Grayson had chosen to mark the beginning of their new chapter, Elena felt a profound sense of renewal. The cool breeze that greeted them as they stepped out was like a gentle benediction, washing away the remnants of their previous trials. In the days that followed, life took on a tender normalcy. There were no more dramatic confrontations or forced arrangements, only quiet moments filled with mutual respect and unspoken promises. At every turn, Grayson and Elena found themselves rediscovering the beauty in the mundane. A shared cup of coffee in the morning light, a lingering touch on a cool evening walk, the soft murmur of "I love you" exchanged in quiet corners of their home. A week after their wedding, amidst the gentle rhythms of everyday life, their love continued to blossom. Friends and family marveled at the transformation, witnessing how the tumultuous past had given way to a future defined by hope and sincere commitment. Their shared experiences, both the pain and the joy, wove together a tapestry that was as intricate as it was resilient. As time moved steadily forward, Grayson and Elena learned to navigate the complexities of their blended lives with patience and compassion. They focused on nurturing their relationship and building a harmonious home for their daughter, Isla, a radiant symbol of their enduring bond. In the midst of life's quiet challenges and joyful triumphs, they rediscovered the strength that had always bound them, even when circumstances had threatened to tear them apart. And so, without any lingering drama or contrived conflicts, they embraced each new day with the determination to create a life defined by love, unity, and the promise of a future where every moment was cherished. Their journey, filled with ups and downs, had finally led them to a place where they could celebrate their love freely and completely. The story of Grayson and Elena, once marred by separation, bitterness, and the meddling of those who sought to control their fate, had evolved into one of redemption and hope. Now, as they pledged their lives to each other and moved forward as a family, their hearts beat in unison, a testament to the enduring power of love and the belief that even the deepest wounds can eventually heal. Sometimes, love doesn't follow a straight path. It twists, it tests, it breaks, only to return stronger, wiser, and more real than ever before. Ethan and Rebecca's journey was one of heartbreak, sacrifice, and resilience. But in the end, what prevailed wasn't wealth, power, or control. It was love. The kind that shows up when it matters, that fights for family, and that heals what was once torn apart. So ask yourself, what would you do for love? Would you wait? Would you forgive? Let us know in the comments below. Do you believe in second chances? Would you have chosen to forgive like Rebecca did? And if this story touched your heart, even just a little, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another heartfelt story. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care, love deeply, and never underestimate the power of coming back home.